Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second episode of Talk with Me. I am your host, Dan Martin. Well, since the majority of the listeners to this program, I assume, are hospital employees, I'm going to imagine that health is something that's a little bit important. I don't think it's too much of a stretch just to suggest that one of the best ways to maintain your body's health is to be mindful of what's going into it. My guest today is Janaelle Humberd. She is a 2000 graduate of UNH as a nutrition major. She came to Mass Ioneer in 2004 and now serves as Mass Ioneer's lead clinical dietitian. Janaelle, thank you for joining the program today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, before we get into the work you're doing here currently, why don't you take us back to that journey of how you came to be here? What inspired your love of nutrition and fitness in general, and how did you come to arrive at Mass Ioneer?
I've actually wasn't even sure I wanted to study nutrition until I got to college and I took my first nutrition class, which at the time was just a general education requirement. And I just found that I wanted to show up for class every day, even though it was at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was just one of those classes that I knew that if I were to go on and study it, it wouldn't feel like work. And the more I learned, the more I enjoyed it. This was actually my first job out of my dietetic internship. So on a whim, I applied and wasn't even sure if I wanted to get into the hospital setting, but it stuck and I've been here 15 years later. I absolutely love everything about it.
In our pre-chat, you had said you did a little work with the Red Cross up west.
Yeah, so I did take a little break. Once I graduated from UNH, I decided to just live somewhere else for a little bit. And I went to San Diego for about a couple of years. And at that time, I was a nutritionist and the company was the American Red Cross. So that was just before I had gotten my internship finished. So I came back to Boston for that. But that was really fun because it was just a nice experience.
Here at the hospital, you oversee a lot of the dietary practices of the patients, the staff, and the hospital as a whole. So why don't you tell us what goes into those three areas?
The primary focus of my job is the patients. So we have an inpatient floor that I oversee. We do adult and pediatrics, and the majority of my patients are the head and neck population. So I do a lot of the tube feeding prescriptions and enteral feeding prescriptions for those patients. I also just do a lot of education on whatever is needed if you're here in the hospital from anything like diabetes or just general nutrition management. And then I have a part in the cafeteria and just kind of what we can do to keep the hospital healthy. Basically anything and everything that would be dietary related, I oversee. It's kind of fun because I get to pull in a little bit of stuff that I enjoy on the side where I do a lot of wellness and try and just do education on how nutrition can be helpful for prevention and, just staying healthy in general. And we try and bring a lot of healthy foods into the CAF and make sure that we're serving stuff that is for everybody with like a lot of allergies that are coming into play now, anyone who needs it.
You used a word specifically to me. You called it a clean living enthusiast. Tell us a little bit about what goes into that outside of the hospital, the programs you're involved in, what you teach, being a fitness instructor, all of that.
Sure. So I'll start off with, I'm a spin instructor, which is sort of a little bit of a passion and a hobby, but I've been doing that for about 15 years. So I get to tie my nutrition in with my exercise. And then I do a lot of consulting outside of here for a gym and just for the general population, just to do any type of education on wellness and nutrition for health prevention. So I like to call myself a clean living enthusiast because I try and practice what I preach, of course, but we learn a lot about the stuff that not a lot of the population knows about what's going into our food, getting away from all those toxic chemicals and food additives that are being added to our food supply, which is a little bit scary. So I try and bring that into my education with my patients and my clients and then practice that myself. So that's why I love what I do, because I'm able to just spread the word where I can.
Guys, if you're enjoying this program, I'd like to ask you now to show us by liking and sharing this video. And we expect that this program will be available on other platforms in the future, podcast hosting sites and all that. So if you're listening to this program on there, then I would ask you to do the same thing. Like, share, leave a comment, give us some feedback. Let us know what you'd like to see going forward. And while you're on the Mass Ioneer YouTube channel, make sure you check out all of the other great content that they have going on there. And make sure, again, that you're subscribed so you can keep up to date on whatever is new coming through the pipe. That's youtube.com/massieandear. Janaelle, getting back to you, in our pre-show discussion, you briefly touched on what sounded like a really harrowing story for you and your family and your husband specifically. Tell us a little bit about that and how it has sort of further committed your desire to increase good health and nutrition to anyone you meet, essentially.
Sure. Yes. So my husband is actually a 2-time brain cancer survivor. So when we had met in our 20s, he had already been diagnosed with cancer and then had a relapse while we were in a relationship. And we found a way to kind of go on and get married, and then decided that a stem cell transplant was the best thing for him. So for almost about a decade of our lives, we both battled through a pretty big health crisis. And, you know, he's healthy and cancer free now. But I felt like during that time and even now, it's been a huge part of just the way I live and practice in terms of health is wealth, because I realize even more now, having it hits in such a personal note, how health can just be such a huge component of quality of life. So it's been great for my work here as a dietitian. A lot of my clients and patients are battling through some type of cancer, and being on the other side of it, I feel like I have a huge compassion for those families and just can take it to another level in terms of helping and seeing if I can make a difference in their life. And then just in terms of how I live in general, I put so much more of a focus and a passion into everything I do because, you know, clearly health is everything. As hard as it was, it's sort of shaped me into who I am today.
Definitely a rough situation for anyone to go through, but it seems like you've come out all the better for it. Janaelle, so as anyone who's probably had a mother can probably attest to, there's a lot of health information out there, maybe not all of it entirely accurate. I can just hear my own mom saying right now, like, oh, Dan, Dr. Oz said you need to only drink soy milk now, or something like that. So you as a dietitian, and obviously you're dealing with patients a lot who need to have specific dietary practices going into procedures. What are maybe some of the common misconceptions or things that you or your staff need to explain to patients that they may not be aware of?
You are definitely right about all the information out there, and it gets even confusing for me to keep up with. I like to keep things simple because there's just so many different diets and things that people try to follow. And at the end of the day, I like to tell people to eat real food. The thing about our food industry now is it's really hard to know what is good and what is bad. And so I think you just need to focus on the simple ingredients and ask yourself, is this real? Meaning, did it come from the ground, or has it been some type, has it been altered in some way to get onto a supermarket shelf? Because there's a lot of food additives and unnatural preservatives and chemicals that are non-food that are going into our food supply. And in a nutshell, that ends up working against us, not for us.
I'm asking for a friend. If there is maybe one thing that you think most of us maybe aren't doing that we can do to improve our diet and just our general health overall?
I would probably say at the top of my list would be stay away from sugar, because there's a lot of hidden sugars in food that people don't even know about. Somebody might think they're eating healthy by grabbing a yogurt off the shelf, and little do they know that it's just packed with as much sugar as a candy bar. And sugar is just so detrimental to health. So I always start there. So it's getting back to reading ingredient lists and looking at the labels and trying to stay away from all the processed stuff out there.
Now, are we talking like specifically processed artificial sugars, or like are natural ones all right?
So natural sugars are the ones that would come from a food that's occurring in nature. So something like fruits and vegetables, those are natural sugars. Your body knows how to process them. But the added sugars and even artificial sweeteners now, they're just chemicals that your body doesn't want to digest. They're not good for your body. Anytime that you see added sugar in an ingredient list, the word sugar, and there are other words for sugar, which can be even more complicated, like syrups and whatnot, that's when you know that it's been added. But for sure, the natural sugars in food, like fruits and vegetables, even some naturally occurring ones in dairy, those are fine.
Hey, well, thinking of things that are sweet, you had mentioned as sort of like a fun fact that you also are a clean wine consultant. Talk about that and maybe some other fun facts if you'd like to share.
Oh, yes. This has been the fun part of my career because I do love a good glass of wine. But I recently found out that a regular glass of wine can have as much sugar as a glazed donut. And where I wouldn't go out and just eat a glazed donut on a whim, that kind of struck my attention. And then, I got into a little bit more learning about the chemicals that go into wine and how there's no labels for them. So, any mass-produced wine can put anything into their wine and sneak it by. And then you're drinking over 250 chemicals that belong into a pool, not your body. So anyway, through that, I was able to find a really great company that I got involved with where they just make wine. It's pretty much wine as nature intended. And, you don't get all the headaches and, you can enjoy a nice glass of wine without, I guess, feeling so guilty about all the sugar, and it's pure and, again, as nature intended. So that's been a little fun part of my job because if anyone is a wine lover, they get really excited about knowing that they can have wine that's not so detrimental to their health, so to speak.
Well, Janaelle, before we close out, I'd like to ask you if there's anything, on the horizon that you're looking at as it relates to nutrition and diet, things that we should probably be keeping an eye on for the future.
Yeah. So I think in terms of what I want to see a real shift in the food industry so that it's not so difficult for a consumer to go into a store and know what to pick off the shelf. It would be nice if that was done for us and we were assured that when we bought a product, it was safe. Things are in motion, but it's very difficult right now to know what to trust as far as brands go. So I wouldn't mind getting more involved with seeing some type of momentum with our food changing so that we can just buy something and know that it's safe. There's a lot of things out there that even cause cancer. And as a country, we're just a little bit behind on that, but we are making some progress. So that is good.
All right. Well, I think this has been a very informative discussion that is going to resonate with a lot of people around the hospital, especially those who have concerns about their own physical health. Janaelle, so if anybody wants to get any more information from you or know anything about your work, both in and outside the hospital, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can always contact me here at the hospital, but I do have my own private nutrition website, which is just my name. It's www.JanelleHumberdNutrition.com. And I have a contact form and ways that people can reach me through that.
Janaelle, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And thank everybody out there for listening to us as well. Once again, I'm going to ask you if you enjoyed this content, remember to leave a comment on the video. Also, remember to like and share. And remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we will catch you next time on Talk With Me. 2 E's in the Me. See you next time.